She got sick of the constant moaning and the drama, so she had to flee. And can you blame her? Can you really blame her? Because Doria Ragland has stayed massively that things aren't great between Meghan Markle and her own mother, Doria Ragland. She has been completely miserable in the last couple of public appearances that the fake Duchess forced on her. Howled, "Don't leave me," as her mother, Doria Ragland, moved out of her and her henpecked husband, Prince Harry's Montecito mansion, RadarOnline.com can reveal.
It starts with a question so quiet, so ordinary, that no one expected it to land like a grenade. What if the most shocking secret about Archie and Lilette isn't who they are, but where they actually were? That question doesn't scream, it doesn't accuse. It just lingers. And once it's out there, it refuses to leave your mind. Because suddenly, everything people thought they knew starts wobbling. It didn't begin with leaked documents, secret recordings, or a dramatic confrontation. According to sources familiar with the moment, it began quietly with a whisper, so unexpected it stopped conversations cold. Doria Ragland, Meghan's mother, allegedly leaned in during a private exchange and asked a question no one in the room was prepared to hear. What are Archie and Lilette like? I've never really seen, let that sink in. A grandmother. Asking what her own grandchildren are like, not what they love, not how they're growing, but what they're like, because she'd never really seen them. That's not gossip. That's a hole in the story big enough to fall into. Then the house comes into focus. According to one former household staffer, stepping inside the Montecito mansion never felt like entering a family home. It felt staged. She claims she worked long shifts, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, moving through every room, hallway, and living space with the kind of familiarity that only comes from repetition. Yet, despite spending more time there than in her own apartment, she says the house never developed a pulse. A home without a pulse. No mess, no chaos, no life.
Or a lesson in gaslighting, or whether Meghan Markle has absolutely lost her mind. Or maybe it is the fact that she's able to get away over and over and over by flaunting her lies most serious.
And that feeling only deepened. Everything was immaculate to an unnatural degree. Cushions were aligned with precision. Surfaces were spotless, not just clean but unused. Kitchens looked prepared for photographs, not meals. Bedrooms felt decorative rather than personal. According to her, nothing was ever out of place because nothing was ever used. There was no evidence of routines forming or habits settling in. This wasn't a family house, it was a showroom. And the silence was the loudest thing of all. What troubled her most, she says, was the atmosphere. Homes with children carry energy, noise, movement, unpredictability. This one, she claims, carried silence, not peaceful silence, but a heavy stillness that made you lower your voice without knowing why. She would pause in rooms expecting to hear something, anything, but there was only emptiness. At first, she tried to rationalize it. At first, she told herself she must be missing it. Perhaps the children were elsewhere. Perhaps they were sleeping. But days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, and nothing changed. The house remained pristine, quiet, and strangely untouched. According to her, it didn't feel like a place where life unfolded. It felt like a place waiting to be observed. And the family, the royal family, the palace.
Maybe she says them over and over. She will convince herself and manage to convince idiots that still give her a platform that she didn't earn.
Is now finally willing to take action in the worst possible way for Meghan Markle. And talking about lies, I'm just going to show you a couple of things here because then came the sound she never heard. She says she listened for it, the unmistakable soundtrack of childhood laughter echoing down. Hallways, sudden cries in the middle of the night, footsteps when they should be asleep, but she claims she never heard a single sound that suggested children lived there. The silence was constant, unbroken, and unsettling. Eventually, someone asked the question out loud. Eventually, she says the absence became impossible to ignore. One afternoon, she quietly asked another staff member if they ever saw the children. According to her, the woman didn't hesitate. She simply shook her head and whispered, "Never." That one word, never. Months passed. Pregnancies came and went publicly. But privately, the most troubling realization came slowly, not as a shocking revelation, but as a growing absence she could no longer explain away. She claims that during the months she worked inside the house periods that allegedly overlap with Meghan's pregnancies.
And the family, the royal family, the palace, is now finally willing to take action. in the worst possible way for Meghan Markle. And talking about lies, I'm just going to show you a couple of things here.
She never once observed any physical signs that would normally accompany pregnancy. She saw Meghan up close, not from a distance or through edited photos, but in tight hallways and everyday moments. According to her account, there was no visible baby bump, no gradual physical change over time, careful movements, or physical discomfort that staff typically notice when someone is expecting. She questioned herself. She doubted herself. Then she compared notes. When she cautiously raised the subject with other staff members, she claims their reactions were telling. They hadn't noticed anything either. No prenatal vitamins on counters, no special dietary requests, no medical appointment coordinated through the house. Nothing that suggested preparation for a baby's arrival. And outside the gates, the world believed a different story. That Archie and Lyle were growing up happily, shielded from public view. Inside, according to those who worked there, the question kept returning. Where were they?
To have grandchildren. So at the beginning of these relationships, they're lovely. Everybody's happy and the children are growing and all that. But if you start taking advantage of the mother, then things get bad because they do need to have.
Then the documentary aired. Months after leaving the job, the staffer says she sat down to watch the Netflix documentary, expecting familiarity. Instead, confusion. The house on screen, she claims, didn't match the house she worked in. The layout felt wrong. The angles didn't align. Rooms appeared larger, brighter, differently shaped. Even the garden looked unfamiliar, and that's when the fear set in. What disturbed her most were the scenes showing family life, children playing freely, laughter echoing across sunlit lawns, moments framed as intimate and spontaneous. She insists she had never seen children playing in those spaces, not once during months of daily work. Then came the rules, the lockdown. From the moment staff arrived at the gates, security protocols reportedly made one thing clear. Information control came first. Staff were searched daily, bags inspected, pockets checked, and the pattern emerged. The laundry. Worker reportedly never washed children's clothes. No onesies, no tiny socks, no pajamas stained with food or grass, nothing ever. The grocery coordinator never ordered baby food. The cook never prepared children's meals. Security guards never escorted children. No one accused. No one speculated, they just noticed. When all the pieces are placed side by side, a troubling picture emerges. One built not on proof, but on patterns. And that's the part that won't go away, because patterns don't lie, they repeat. The world sees photos, carefully staged, carefully lit, carefully controlled. But behind the gates, silence, absence, and one unanswered question that keeps echoing louder every time someone tries to ignore it. If no one inside that house ever saw Archie and Lilibet, where were they? The question doesn't explode. It doesn't trend neatly. It just sits there, heavy, unresolved, gnawing at the edges of everything people were told to believe. Because once you accept that the people inside that house weren't careless observers, once you understand they were there every single day, dawn to night, cleaning corners no one ever sees on camera, listen for sounds that never came, then the discomfort deepens. These weren't strangers peeking through hedges. These were the people trusted with keys, codes, routines. People who knew when the lights were switched off, when the rooms were locked, when the silence settled in like fog. And silence has a weight. It presses on you. It makes you notice what isn't there far more than what is. They didn't expect perfection. Children are chaos. Sticky fingers, crumbs in couches, random socks appearing in places that make no sense. They expected messes that reappear no matter how much you clean. They expected exhaustion baked into the walls. But day after day, there was nothing to reset, nothing to tidy away except untouched surfaces. No signs of mornings rushed, no bedtime rituals, no half-finished moments. And the longer it went on, the harder it became to pretend it was coincidence. What made it worse, the staffer says, was how often the public narrative contradicted the private reality. Headlines spoke of family life, of hands-on parenting, of protection and privacy. Inside the gates, privacy felt less like shielding children and more like sealing off truth. There's a difference, and once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. She describes how people stopped asking questions openly, not because curiosity disappeared, but because everyone sensed there were lines you didn't cross. The house didn't just feel quiet. It felt watched. Not watched for safety, but watched for compliance. Cameras didn't follow intruders. They followed staff. Movements were tracked. Patterns noted. The message was subtle, but clear. Do your job. Say nothing. Notice nothing. That kind of environment changes how people breathe. She remembers moments When Meghan appeared, how her presence never lingered, how it felt like a performance slot rather than a life unfolding. Quick entrances, quick exits, always someone nearby. Assistants, associates, sometimes cameras. Sometimes Marcus Anderson. Rarely, if ever, solitude. And never the organic mess of a parent interrupted mid-sentence by a child tugging at their sleeve. When cameras rolled, the warmth switched on like a light. Smiles appeared. Voices softened. Energy filled the space briefly, artificially. Then filming stopped, and the air went flat again. Conversations ended mid-thought. Rooms emptied. The house returned to its stillness, like a stage after the audience leaves. Staff began to understand they weren't caretakers of a home. They were caretakers of an image. The argument that night only confirmed what many already felt but couldn't articulate. Raised voices breaking the silence felt shocking precisely because the house had been so emotionally muted for so long. Meghan's voice sharp, fast, charged. Harry's tired, pleading, worn thin. The kind of voice that doesn't argue to win, but argues to survive the moment. Seeing Harry afterward, shoulders slumped, eyes dulled, quietly accepting a glass of water like it was the only kindness left in the room, stayed with her. Not because it was dramatic, but because it felt intimate in a way the house never did. That wasn't a single bad evening. That was a glimpse behind a curtain. After that, the atmosphere shifted permanently. Smiles disappeared entirely. Tension lingered like humidity. Staff didn't need confirmation or evidence. They felt it in their bodies. When you work somewhere long enough, the space teaches you what's wrong before your mind catches up. And then there were the pregnancies. Or rather the absence of anything resembling them. She had worked around expectant mothers before. She knew the subtle signs people don't think to hide because they don't even notice them. Adjustments in posture, unconscious hand placements, slower movements, small complaints uttered without thinking. None of it appeared here. Not once, not privately, not casually, not accidentally. She told herself clothes can hide a lot. Cameras can manipulate perception. But daily proximity strips illusions away. And when she compared her observations with others, the silence echoed again. No vitamins, no appointment schedules, no dietary changes, no preparation, no nervous excitement or logistical scrambling that inevitably accompanies an incoming baby. And yet, outside the gates, the world consumed glowing images, styled outfits, carefully cradled bellies, narratives delivered with confidence and certainty. The documentary should have reconciled the two worlds. Instead, it cracked them further apart. Watching it felt like watching recreation rather than a memory. The rooms didn't match. The angles felt wrong. The flow of space didn't align with months of muscle memory. Even the light fell differently. Anyone who has lived inside a place knows when a room is off by even a few feet. And this wasn't subtle. Then came the scenes with children. Running freely, laughing openly, existing in spaces that, according to those who cleaned them daily, had never hosted that kind of life. That's when fear replaced confusion. If the house on screen wasn't the house they worked in, why film there? Why rebuild intimacy somewhere else? Why manufacture domesticity instead of capturing it where it supposedly already existed? And once that question forms, it multiplies. The staff began quietly tallying absences across departments. Laundry, food, security, cleaning. Every role intersected with daily life in different ways, and yet every role reported the same void. No child-related tasks. No accommodations, no disruptions, no evidence of small humans shaping the rhythm of the house. These weren't dramatic people chasing scandal. They were professionals noticing what their jobs never required them to do. When patterns repeat across independent systems, they stop being accidents. And that's where the story truly unsettles, because there's no single smoking gun, no definitive document, no leaked photograph, just a mountain of silence, built piece by piece, day by day, by people who had no reason to lie, and every reason to stay quiet. It began with a grandmother's whisper. It continued with a house that never felt alive. It deepened through pregnancies no one witnessed, children no one encountered, and a family life presented publicly that didn't exist privately. And now, long after those staff members left, long after the gates closed behind them, the question still hasn't found an answer. Not who the children are, not why privacy was desired, but something far simpler and far more disturbing. If everyone inside that house kept asking the same thing, and no one could answer it, where were they really?